Hi, my name's Katherine Teresa Corkery.
And you're known in school as
Kate.
As Kate. Kate, where's the middle name come from?
Teresa was the name of my parents' best friend. We called her Aunt Teresa, and she lived out in Wading River.
Okay, and your mother's name is Florence, and that was your sister's name.
Yes.
Where is Katherine?
Katherine was my great aunt, and she lived with us when I was growing up, and I was named for her. She's a special lady.
So you definitely have a memory of her being
Yes.
with you. This question I'm going to ask you right away because it seemed to come up right now, even though it was down the line in what I was going to pose. Besides your immediate family, who were the adults that had a formative influence on you and making you the person you are?
Oh my, so many people. I think many of my Girl Scout camp leaders were very influential on me. Certainly some teachers. Mr. Fred Coverdale at Bayport High School was certainly an influence.
Okay. You mentioned Katherine.
Yes.
Tell me about what connection or how did she affect you, your personality or your. I shouldn't say that. How did she affect you, one way or another? What did you learn from her?
I can't say that I remember specific instances of things she said or things she did. I think it was hearing the stories about how wonderful she was, how she overcame so many obstacles to become a very remarkable woman. She had scarlet fever when she was young, and she lost her hearing. And before she became totally deaf, she went and learned how to read lips. She learned how to modulate her voice, how to dance. She was one of the first people to have hearing aids. And they were enormous gadgets that she actually had to sew into the lining of her clothes with these large batteries and the wires that came up. And
she sounds like a very strong person.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. And she was instrumental in raising my mother, whose mother had passed away when she was only 16. So I would say that is the strong connection.
Okay.
Yes.
But also your mom, speaking of Florence, your mother is an incredible woman. So
Yes, she is.
a lot of Katherine's input was also given to your mother,
Yes,
who passed it along.
Yes, she was very instrumental in making sure that my mother not only attended high school, but went into college. And my mother went to St. John's University in the, I guess, early 30s, graduating summa cum laude I think before she was 20 years old, because she'd skipped classes. And so mom's a tough act to follow.
Did everyone in your family of your generation go to college?
At one point or another. My sister did not go through college, but took courses and things like that. My brother attended college for a year or so, but that wasn't their field. Yeah.
But you were the first to become an educator then,
After
following in your mother's
Yes.
footsteps.
Yes.
Where are you living now?
I live in Sayville.
And who is there with you?
Well, I'm married to Jim Keeley. We've been together for a very long time, and we recently, past 7 years, decided to make it legal.
Is that nice?
Yes.
How did you meet Jim?
This is interesting. We met on the river in Sayville, on Browns River. He had a sailboat, and I had a little powerboat, and we'd pass each other and wave. Everybody's very, community spirited there. And I asked a friend, "Oh, who is that cute looking Irish guy with the black curly hair?" and they'd say, "Oh, you don't want to have anything to do with him. He's up. Oh no, don't get involved." And he would ask the same thing. Who's the Irish chick with the black curly hair? And they said, "Oh, you don't want to get involved with her." I said, "Oh, no. Well, we just decided to take matters in our own hands, and he took me out sailing one night, and
it's a wonderful story.
Yeah, it's a wonderful story.
It's a matter of fact, I'm speechless after that. That's a great story. And how many years has it been since you met?
Over 20. I lost track.
Isn't that wonderful? Okay. Do you have any children?
No, I don't.
You don't. Okay. Is there a in your own family, among your sister who you just lost recently and your younger brother, are there any family qualities, family traits, family talents or abilities that you recognize as having been passed down through the generations? Is there anything that you've seen?
Yes. At my sister's passing, I did take great comfort trying to put her life in perspective, and I did a little writing and wrote something which was read at her service, and there seemed to be the recurring theme, her acquiring the talents that my mother had in sewing and embroidery and being of community service, and just being very involved in children, our lives as children, and then my sister's life with her children, and passing on those talents. My brother also is very talented. He's very artistic and skilled. I like to say Mom's got magic in her fingers. My sister's got the magic in her fingers. My brother has magic in his fingers. Kind of bypassed me. I kind of.
But you have a different kind of magic, I would say, and I think that much of it comes due to your mother's influence on you with people, with children, and with other people. I want to go back to where you met, and this question slipped away from me a moment ago. When you met Jim on the Carmen's River.
No, Browns River.
On the Browns River, right?
Browns River.
We were talking before about visual literacy.
Yes.
And I wondered, is there a visual picture that you get if someone says Browns River? What do you think of? What comes to mind as almost as a metaphor or an image of Browns River?
It's very visual. The light glistening off the river, or the fog rolling down the river in the mornings, the sound of the halyards slapping, seagulls. It's a lovely place, and we live right on the river, so it's very much a part of my life. Where
were you born?
Brooklyn.
What part of Brooklyn?
Well, I guess it would be the East New York, Flatbush was, I'm not really sure.
Okay.
I'm not a city girl.
Okay. Because you left there at what time? How old were you?
I was, we moved out to Bayport. I was 7, and that was in 1955.
And Bayport was really the country.
It sure was.
You've seen a lot of changes in Bayport.
I have.
People who go out there for the first time now think it's the country, but you remember when. What's your earliest? Do you have an early memory of living in Brooklyn, or no?
Not really, no.
Okay,
Again, it's looking at pictures. Actually, we had a short stop in between living in Woodhaven, so.
That was country at one time.
Yes, too. yes. My parents did what many of their generation did. They went from Brooklyn to Queens, out to Long Island.
Yeah. Not exactly a hop, skip, and a jump today with the traffic
No.
when you make the jump. What was your mom's maiden name?
Parfait.
And that's an Irish background?
No, it's not. Actually, her mother was from Ireland,
Uh-huh.
and the last name was Mullins. She was Annie Elizabeth Mullins. And her father was Otto Bartholomew Parfait. I think Parfait is one of those French Alsatian names. You know, it's depending on Germany. You know, it's either part of Germany or part of France.
And there's a historic connection even with the Irish, though, with the French, and in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Where was your father born?
My father, his family were all, Irish, probably Irish English, going way, way back.
Was he born in this country?
Yes, he was born here, and his relatives go way back to. They were from Massachusetts originally and came this way.
And before Massachusetts, his relatives were from Ireland?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, we haven't.
You've never visited, have you?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I've gone back to Ireland. I was there a few times. Actually, my mother.
Any tracing of the family?
I really didn't, but I did visit family. Okay. I visited my mother's family. So her family actually, she had inherited the family farm in Northern Ireland. And she, because my grandmother was the oldest, and there were maybe 12 or so behind her, and the youngest was my mother's age. So my mother turned the family farm back over to her Aunt Martha and her family. So.
And did they farm it?
Yes. Yeah, they're still there.
They're still there.
And it was a beautiful place. I was there in 1971, and it was they had just put on a tin roof. It was the quintessential little white cottage with the stones, and it was just set on a hillside, covered with purple flowers.
What did they farm? Do you remember?
I know they had hay. They had some cows and chickens. Yeah.
Okay. What's the memory that you carry with you of your mother doing stuff that she enjoyed doing when you were little? And you would watch her. You would just watch her.
Oh my God. Oh, of course, cooking. She's a fabulous cook. I think earliest memories of her with the sewing machine and yards and yards and yards of fabrics and sequins and feathers and ruffles, because she made dancing school costumes. This is how she paid for our dancing lessons, and watching her and hearing that the sewing machine. She was always doing something with her hands.
And of course, that generation also spent an awful lot of time in the kitchen as well.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm. But your mom didn't have a lot of time because she was teaching, I assume.
Well, she went back to school. It must have been when I was in probably, that tween-age years. Yeah. She went back and decided she was going to get into elementary education, because she really enjoyed that. She had been a business teacher for a very short time at one point in her life. And so once all of us were grown up enough that we could be on our own and fend for ourselves, she went back and started taking some courses and got her elementary education degree, and started working in Brentwood.
I'm jumping all over the place with these questions. I realize it, but I want to go back to ask you, what about your dad? What did he enjoy doing?
He was a great people person, Mr. Personality, the most popular father in the neighborhood. He was big and burly and the softest, biggest heart. He had been a milkman. He had many, many jobs. that he took on, keeping us well fed, well clothed, and very happy and content.
Do you remember
So,
the name of the company that he worked for when he delivered?
He worked for Evans Dairy.
Yes.
First, he worked for Sheffield Farms, and when we moved out to Bayport, he worked for Evans Dairy. And I have to tell this story because he was really a hero. Recently we came across a magazine article about him that we had just totally forgotten about. It wasn't mentioned. You don't mention acts of heroism, but he was delivering milk to, I think, maybe families in Coney Island area, and he walked in to a house. And in those days, the back doors open and come in, the milkman would leave the milk. And he smelled gas in the house. And he called out to the people in the house, and he didn't hear anything. And he went in, and he found a little boy who was barely conscious, took him out, ran back in, and got his mom and brought her out. And so there was a big article about him in a magazine.
Sure.
And as I said, being a very modest man, you never heard about these things. My dad had he owned a dock building company. Once we moved to Bayport, his love was the ocean and fishing and beaches, and so he enjoyed building things, and so he did have a dock building company for many years.
Did he have a good sense of humor?
Oh, absolutely.
I'll bet you can hear his laugh right
Absolutely.
now. Yes. Yeah. That's great. Great memories.
Yeah, we were buddies. I was his buddy. I used to go with him over to the beach when he'd be working on the docks. He built the docks over at Fire Island Pines, Watch Hill, Cherry Grove, and so I would go with him and hang out on the beach while he and his crew were building the docks.
Wow. Neat.
It was neat.
Why did you decide to go to college? A lot of your generation didn't go to college. They went into different fields that didn't require college. Did you know you wanted to be a teacher?
I think I did. Once Mom had gotten back into teaching in Brentwood, oh gosh, every project she did for Brentwood was a family project, and we all pitched in on things, and whether it was making sets and costumes for Cinderella play or making cupcakes for the Halloween party, everybody got involved, and I would come with her to visit her class, and just had such a great day, and I loved the kids, and I thought that teaching them to learn how to read was such an important thing.
So you got hooked.
I got hooked.
Now, you didn't have a large family. Of course, your parents came from large families.
No, they had small families.
Where was the 12 members? Where was that? Who was that with the 12? You mentioned there was about 12 people in the family. Before we were talking about somebody.
Oh, I don't know.
I thought it was your grandparents or something. My mistake.
I don't think so.
My mistake. Okay. Now, you mentioned to me when we were talking before we started to film that you were the middle child.
Yes.
How did that affect you? Do you think it did?
Oh, absolutely. I think, a lot of my personality, I was bounced off my older sister and younger brother. It seemed like, the family joke is that if you wanted to know what you could get me or what I would like, you would ask my sister, and then you get the exact opposite. We were very, very opposite. She was very girly, and I was kind of a little tomboy. As I said, I was my dad's buddy, and I wasn't really into that sewing and learning all those skills. But so I don't know. I think I was close. I'm closer to my brother
Did you
in age.
did you teach him anything that you see he's picked up on?
Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm getting over it. You would ask me about being compared to my siblings in school, and I have the quintessential story. My sister was the ace business student. She had flying fingers that could type a gazillion words a minute, and she did the scribbly stuff called shorthand, and she was the A student, 5 years ahead of me. When I took typing, the teacher was so glad. Oh, you're Florence's sister. Oh, that's wonderful. It's going to be wonderful having you in the class. And so there I was, feeling very proud of myself, and sat down at the typewriter, and we were all poised with our fingers ready to hit those keys. And on my first keystroke, my charm bracelet got caught in the typewriter key. And since I was Florence's sister, the teacher wasn't looking at me because she thought I'd just be doing so well. So as everybody was having the quick brown fox jump over the sleeping dog, I was still trying to extricate myself from the typewriter. And she came over and just shook her head and closed her eyes and said, "You're nothing like your sister, are you?" And I said, "No." So I struggled through typing. I barely made it. And
What was your first paying job?
I was a camp counselor at Camp Edie in Bayport, a Girl Scout camper.
How old were you at that point?
Well, let's see. We had to be at least 15. Before that, I had done babysitting. I did a lot of babysitting as a youngster.
Was there one particular holiday that your family really went all out to celebrate?
I would say the typical Christmas. Christmas
Okay.
brings back all the fond memories. And I've been thinking about those. Can I tell you my
Sure.
Elvis story?
Sure.
Again, it involves my sister, and this has been part of my my therapy, talking about her. The year that Elvis came out with the song Blue Christmas, my sister insisted that we had to decorate the tree in all blue lights, all blue decorations for this song and for Elvis. Well, we weren't having any part of it. And, it was like 4-1, no, we're not doing it. And it was her first defeat. She always seemed to get her way. My father, being the softy that he was not going to buy a new tree. We couldn't afford it. We had the Charlie Brown tree that Mom got the good deal on. And he decided, though, that he really did want to plant a spruce tree next spring. So instead of waiting till the spring, he went and he got a little spruce tree about this big with, in the ball, put it in a coal scuttle and gave it to my sister. And she decorated her tree with blue lights and blue tinsel and blue ornaments, and we hummed along to Elvis, and it's a favorite Christmas memory.
Right. In school, you mentioned being compared to your sister, but what was your favorite subject when you were in elementary or in high school?
Actually, I loved anything to do with reading and social studies. I loved history. I loved learning about the American Revolution. Was something I was always very fascinated.
And flip that to the other side. Did you have a least favorite subject?
Math.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I just don't do numbers well.
I'm wondering if it was solely your mother's influence, or was there somebody else along the line, either a teacher or a family member or a friend, or was it just something that came from you that made you decide, I want to be I want to be a teacher. I want to study education.
I think it was from my mom, from my Aunt Catherine. Education was a luxury
Yes.
in their day.
Ah, sure.
And here I was offered so many opportunities. I had to take advantage of it.
You must have had, then along the way, you had some pretty unforgettable teachers to keep you encouraged and to keep you moving along that line. Name one or two people.
Sorry.
Name one or two people that really.
From high school, I would have to say Nick Maletta, who was you probably have heard the name. He was very involved with the teachers unions and things back in the 60s and
Nice.
70s.
Mm-hmm.
He was my Latin teacher. I don't know how much Latin we learned, but it was almost like a course in social history with a lot of laughs thrown in. It was a wonderful experience. Yeah.
Did you have a favorite game that as a either as a little girl or as a teenager, a game or a sport that you loved to play?
I was not much at games. My sister again was. She was the game person.
Okay.
She'd have my brother and I playing Monopoly for hours and gin rummy and things like that. I love sports, any kind of sports. Field hockey, swimming. Swimming's my passion. I love swimming.
I was going to ask you about toys that you remember, but maybe I should ask you, what was the most important book that you remember reading as a young person?
Oh, I remember, I must have been in about 8th grade, and I was home sick with a bad cold. My mother brought several books home, and one of them was Jane Eyre, Vanity Fair, The Tale of Two Cities, and I remember, reading Tale of Two Cities, and when I realized who Madame Defarge was, I remember throwing the book down and running down and saying, "Now I know who Madame Defarge was." And my mother said, "Well, it's about time. You figured it out." So I said, I guess that would be one, and the other would be Winnie the Pooh.
Okay. Yes. Did you have a favorite season growing up?
Winter. I love winter. I love snow and I love fresh, cold air. I was always a winter person.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah. Ice skating.
Has it changed, or is it still?
No, I still love it. Yeah. We actually, instead of being a snowbird that goes south, Jim and I are snowbirds that go north to the Adirondacks, and we enjoy all the outdoor sports.
Like?
Well, I'm a cross-country skier. He likes the snowmobiles and things like that, but we enjoy that.
That's great. Take us through the schools that you attended, from preschool or from.
I went to a very small little school in Woodhaven. I think it was PS 65 or something. It was a tiny, tiny little school, wooden schoolhouse. And then I don't have that many memories, just of, I think, snack time and having graham crackers and things like that.
Let me ask you a question, strange as it may seem. If you can put yourself as a child going back into that building, into that school, what's the first aroma that you can detect?
That paste, that white paste in a jar, and when you'd open it and that aroma would come up.
All right. So you go ahead, finish. You were taking us through the school.
So that was my first school, and then I went to the Bayport Elementary School when entered in 2nd grade, and then to the Bayport Junior High School. James Wilson Young became the name of Bayport High School, Bayport Blue Point. I graduated in 66. I then went to Hamlin University out in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Why? Why there? That's so far away.
I had a girlfriend who lived in Manhasset when I was growing up. And in order for us to get together, we had to come up with an excuse, because she's in Manhasset, I'm in Bayport. So there was a college fair somewhere in between our towns. Okay, let's say we're going to meet there. And so I went to, and it was a Midwestern College Council. And they had all these representatives. So I knew I had to pick up a few brochures or something, And I got speaking with Dean Tramp of from Hamlin, and he was just a wonderful person, and he sent me home with all these brochures, and I think I just kind of put them away, not thinking about it. I was going to go to a state school like everybody else, and I hadn't really thought of it. And then somewhere toward the end of my senior year, it was like, do I really want to go upstate? Everybody I know is going there. It would kind of be like a continuation of high school. So I got out the brochures, sent in the application. It was the only out-of-state school I applied to. And I got an acceptance, and they had a wonderful thing called guaranteed tuition. So if you signed up that year, the tuition was guaranteed for the next 4 years. My parents were happy about that. I had a little bit of the wanderlust in me, and I always loved going places, and I was eager to, go to this beautiful Twin Cities I had heard about. And it was everything I hoped it would be.
And you love the winter.
And I love the winter. You gotta love the snow, But it was a small university, but very good credentials, excellent teachers, the personal touch, and it was in 2 beautiful cosmopolitan cities, and yet there was the wide open spaces too. Beautiful place.
They say that aromas are triggers to memory. I've asked you already what a memory associated with your elementary school. I'm wondering about Minnesota. What kind of an aroma comes to mind?
I can tell you the first time I went to my girlfriend's farm in Sleepy Eye, Minnesota, and I went, and my girlfriend she said, "Oh, I know." She said, "It's pigs," and her dad said, "Marjorie, don't you dare say anything. That's money you're smelling." So I always remember that.
That's great. What? So then, when you finished school, did you do your graduate work away from home, or did you do that on Long Island?
I did both. I came back to Long Island in 1970 when I graduated. The job market had just started tightening up. There weren't a lot of job offers, and except for places like Sitka, Alaska, and I came this close to going to Sitka, Alaska, and at the last minute in August sometime, I had gone on some interviews, hadn't gotten anything, and August was rolling around, and I had an interview in Brentwood and in William Floyd, and so I came home for those, and I went for the interview at Northwest Elementary School. Lou Latito was the principal, and he was just wonderful. And I toyed with the idea of William Floyd because it was going east in the morning and it was down by the water. But I had a history with Brentwood already, and so I felt like I was part of that family already, because I had done substitute there during college and things like that. So.
Okay, so it was Brentwood, and that was 1970?
1970, yeah. But then I'd go back to Minnesota in the summers. I was doing some graduate work at the University of Minnesota, and then came back here and did, finished up with.
Was it Mr. Latito who interviewed you?
Yes.
And that was the interview, that was it?
Yeah, that was the one.
Do you remember any of the questions he asked you?
No.
Okay.
Except, why would you put on your application that you were a college Republican? And I said, I don't know, because I'm not really. I think I was dating someone who was a college Republican. I thought it would look good on the resume.
How many years did you serve in public education?
38.
And in that time, after you completed your graduate work, you must somewhere along the line have also added to your certifications one way or another.
Let's just say I never finished graduate work. It was ongoing throughout my years.
What kind of degrees? What are the degrees you hold at the moment?
I started as an elementary school teacher. That first year that I was hired was when the South Elementary School closed in Brentwood, and so there were cutbacks. There were 8 new teachers hired at Northwest, and I remember Lula Tito bringing us in and saying, "I wish I could keep you all before we have to go." And so it was last one in, first one out, and I waited and waited, and finally got offered another position at Pine Park, where my mom was teaching, and many schools after that. So just to finish the question on the certifications, I was always staying one step ahead of being accessed. I was accessed 14 times, and so I had my my undergraduate degree in English, so I got certified in English just in case, and luckily I did need that. I was accessed from English and went back to elementary, and I got my certification in reading. I also dabbled in ESL, they called it TESOL at the time, but I had got my certification in reading, and then finally my certification in administration. And it was whatever job I had to do, whatever certification I needed, I'd keep going back. But I loved it. I loved every minute of it.
Was there something that you can point to that, looking back over the breadth of your entire career, that gave you a sense of accomplishment and particular pride, that you saw this happen or you made this happen?
I think it might have been the implementation of the assured readiness for learning program, ARL. When Christy Tidaldi had become the director of elementary education, we were taking a hard look at what was happening, and those test scores started, that the focus was really there, and she had us as reading teachers going out and researching different reading programs, and she hit upon this assured readiness for learning, and we had all agreed that we needed to do this. This was good for our children in Brentwood. And
because Brentwood continued to be a magnet to all kinds of cultures and countries.
Absolutely. And I was very, very fortunate. Christy and Les must have talked things over and thought that there was a place for me as a staff developer. And so I became the expert on assured readiness for learning, and they created this teacher and special assignment position for me. And I was going in as a staff developer, working with all the teachers and making sure it was implemented correctly. I got to work directly with Phil McGinnis, Dr. McGinnis, who was the spearhead of this program. His research had developed all of these activities that we were using. Also with Dr. Dave Kilpatrick, who worked with Dr. McGinnis, and I think we gave our teachers fabulous tools as educators. It wasn't just about subject matter learning, it was educating the entire child, making sure that they had all the skills, that they were ready at the appropriate time to to move on to the next level.
Speaking of moving on, when you retired, did you cut loose, or are you still involved? Are you still working?
I failed at retirement, I have to say. I could not stay away. I've been doing some educational consulting work with BOCES and also for the Scholastic
Excellent,
program.
because of your experience. You're a resource, an incredible resource.
Yeah, I had also implemented the Scholastic Read 180 program at the middle school level just before I retired, and we saw great progress with our students. It was a technology-based program where everything was offered to the children at their readability level, and as they mastered various skills, they would move on, and we saw reading levels rise dramatically and test those.
Did you have a worst professional day?
Yes. I'm sure we all have.
Is that something that you would like to share? Or should we leave it alone?
I think we could leave it alone. It wasn't anything traumatic or dramatic, but it was just, I was certainly not at my best.
If you had had to make another choice of career other than the one that you chose, what do you suppose it might have been?
I really have no idea.
You never flirted with something else?
Maybe going off on archaeological digs. Something like that, something to do with history. But my skills in science and math were not strong enough that I would, follow that that route.
Okay.
And I guess I just always knew that I was good at working with children, and reading was a passion.
Now, when you started in Brentwood, you said 1970. Who were some of the people that you worked with that first year?
Okay, well, the first year, actually, Christy Tadaldi was hired. We were brand new teachers at Northwest together. Mary Pat Lyons was my buddy teacher across the hall. You couldn't ask for a better mentor than Mary Pat Lyons. And years later, our paths crossed again when she was the math consultant at Loretta Park, and I was the reading consultant. And we were the dynamic duo. We really were. We had a great time.
During those 38 years, Brentwood continued to grow and to change, and yet paradoxically remained the same. How was it different when you left from the way it was when you arrived?
I think the children were the same, but in different packages. All of them beautiful, eager to learn. The schools were older and a little more run down, but then they spruced things up with that wonderful bond issue they had. I think, though, once the administration had really changed, that very last year, it seemed to be that sense of family seemed to be gone. Everybody knew everybody
Yes.
on some level.
Yes.
And it's very rare that someone you meet would say, "Oh, my sister works in Brentwood." Oh, you wouldn't know her, right? That's such a big district. You'd mention the name. Oh, of course, yeah. Oh, I know. And she's got a dog named so. It's just everybody. There was that collegiality and that real, genuine feeling of family.
Is it fair to say that the mission from the third floor down seemed to change, but the mission of individual teachers seemed consistent. I mean, the people in the classroom, people working with
Oh,
children,
absolutely.
and the people working with teachers,
Hmm.
they recognized that there was still a dedication, almost a missionary zeal.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And everyone says it's about the kids. You know, the children first.
Yes.
And even though there were new people, you know, at the top levels, that was their mission too. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did your training at teacher college prepare you for Brentwood?
No.
In what way didn't it prepare you?
Well, working or going to school in Minnesota and doing my student teaching in Minnesota, ethnic was if you had an Italian last name. You know? So multiculturalism was not any part of my educational background.
Okay.
And I think I learned more from going to school, visiting my mother's class, or substituting in Brentwood when I was in college than I did in any of my education classes.
Yes. Okay. I know you had occupied many different roles in the system, from the time that you arrived to the time your career culminated. As what was your title as in your leaving?
I was the coordinator of language arts and social studies,
Which had
K-12.
Had been a lot of combinations
Yes.
there. So the responsibilities that you had at the time that you left gave you a very specific, defined purpose. What your role was, what your job description was, what the expectations on your performance were. But that's not what made you get up every morning and come to work. You had your own purpose for doing everything that you have ever done as an employee of the state and as a teacher in the public school systems in Brentwood. Kate, how did you define your purpose in getting up every day and coming in?
Oh, I don't even know if it was a purpose. It was just something I enjoyed. I wanted to be there. I wanted to participate. I wanted to learn something new and share it with other people. I think that was a wonderful part of my job, was that I got to do staff development, that I got to learn things and then share them with my colleagues.
Are you still connected to some of those colleagues, some of those people that you work with?
Oh, sure.
You still have a social
Absolutely.
connections.
Yes.
I mean, because we said it is about kids, but it's about family too. And that became our family.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's still very close.
Do you have any connections with some of your former students?
Every now and then I run into some,
Okay.
and actually this was just something happened recently. It was so lovely. A little girl that I had in first grade at Southeast Elementary School, Lorraine Pace, grew up to become a teacher, a first grade teacher, teaching in the exact same classroom where she was my student. And I was just invited to her wedding. And it's just lovely to, be remembered in that way. And those things, happen quite often.
How about your membership in professional organizations? Were you were a member of the BTA for a period of years? Were you active in?
No, I wasn't active as far as
Okay.
being a delegate or anything like that. I know my mom had been active in that, but
Were you a member of BIPSO then at some point?
yes, I was a member of
Were you
BIPSO.
ever active with them in some capacity?
Not really. No,
Okay.
I was just one of
Yes.
the team.
Okay.
But I am very active. Was very active. Still am very active with New York State Reading Association.
So your involvement was at the state level rather than at the local level.
Well, I guess you could say that. Yeah,
Okay.
I was a regional director for New York State Reading.
Okay.
International Reading Association, Suffolk Reading Council. I still participate in all of those groups.
Have you ever been afraid to come to work?
Never. Never. I know when I started working at the high school, I must have been late 70s, early 90s. I know my dad was a little nervous about my going to the Brentwood High School because, it had a reputation. However, I never had an experience, a bad, negative, frightening experience with those students. They were wonderful. And I remember one day, I was a class advisor, and we were getting ready for homecoming, and we were building some kind of a float, and my dad was carting over parts of the float, and he arrived at the high school, and all of these really wonderful young men, came out. Oh, sir, let me help you with that. And he was so impressed, and he went home and he said, oh, we don't have to worry about her. She's fine over there.
For somebody who is very easygoing and very compassionate as far as other people are concerned, there had to be things that pushed your buttons, that in your professional responsibilities, things that made you angry. Tell me about one thing that made you angry.
I think it would be the teachers who just, and there were not many, maybe a handful, who to them this was just something they did during the day to pass the time or to make money.
Would it be fair to say that they lacked the passion?
Lacked the passion, yeah. They were good teachers, but there wasn't that
Fire.
Fire, right, exactly. But there are few, very few, far between.
But in your role as a manager and as an administrator, you had to keep your eye out to do what you can to stoke the furnaces.
Actually, Andy Levito used to say that I could get more mileage out of a certain person than anyone he knew. So I took that as a great compliment.
That's a great compliment, sure. You knew how to push their buttons. That's great. Great. What was the actual date of your retirement, Kate?
Now I'm drawing a blank. It was 2008. Yes, 2008.
Wow, has it been that long?
4 years already.
Wow.
Yeah.
What have you been doing since?
Well, as I said, I've been working for, doing a little consulting work for BOCES. I've most recently been doing a lot of work for the Scholastic Company as an educational consultant, working with teachers, teaching them programs. And it's Mary Pat Lyons has got to be in heaven looking down and chuckling because I am the least techie person in the world. Technology was a great mystery to me. And here I am working, teaching other teachers how to work through this technology program to teach reading. So it's
okay.
Yeah. So I'm always learning.
What was the last assignment that? Well, we've already talked about what the last assignment was that you had as a coordinator for language arts and social studies. The total number of years again was 38? 38 years. I wonder if you remember how much you made the first year.
I think it was a grand total of, I'm going to say $8,000. And I know at the time in Sitka, Alaska, they were paying almost twice that. But of course, the cost of living there was phenomenal.
But that was before taxes too.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And I think that you may have answered this question, but I'm going to pose it anyway. And that is the specific reason you decided it was time for you to leave active service after 38 years. I sensed before you referred to the changing climate with administrators around you and above you that were leaving, and I guess the timing was such that you felt.
Yes. My colleagues were all retiring. I seemed to be one of the last. I think somebody said, I think you're the last tier 1 person we have here, And I thought, maybe.
Who were some of the colleagues that you're referring to that were leaving or had already left?
Well, Christy Tadaldi.
Yes. Les Black,
of course, had left. Mark Nisowitz was leaving. Yes. Barbara Baranowski, Labatina Biondo, she and I worked closely together. She was my counterpart for math and science. But then a lot of my friends who were teachers in the district, Joyce Weber-Lipsky, Betty Norton, so many people had already retired. And, I would go into the schools and I'm like, I don't know that many people anymore, So, I thought, maybe it's time to move on.
What was the most fun part of your job?
At the end, when I was an administrator, well, it certainly wasn't testing and scoring. That was the most challenging, but I lived for that. Actually, it was a very small part, arts and education. I loved bringing into the schools authors and artists, and having them share their talents. I feel that we have such a little emphasis on role models. The role models that our children choose are not ones that, are always appropriate. And I wanted to give them a sense of people from other places, people who are real writers, and artists, illustrators, and have them share that experience.
You never know who you are going to influence by doing that.
Absolutely.
All of a sudden, a light can come on that can open a path.
One of the nicest cards I had received when I retired was from a little girl at Hemlock Park, and she wrote and she said, I want to be just like you when I grow up and bring people books, or give books to all the children in the world.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it was
wonderful. Nice.
Touched my heart.
Yes. Is there anything, Kate, that given a chance to do it over, that you would do differently?
As far as teaching, or
as far as not so much teaching, but in your final assignment and the assignment that you had, is there anything that you would like to have completed that you couldn't complete, or you didn't have the resources to do, or you would have done it differently if you had had more time?
I think I was happy with what I had completed. I think I could have stayed there for a long, long time, and seen other programs implemented, but I was happy with what I did, and it was fresh, it was new, it was working. Go out on a positive.
Absolutely. While we in Brentwood were busy with kids and doing what we were supposed to be doing, the world was changing around us. The ground was shifting. Some really important historical events happened in the 38 years that you were in the classroom. Mention or tell us about one, and where were you and what were you doing?
It had to be 9/11. I had just left Oak Park. It was an early morning meeting that Irma Colon had her faculty there, and I was presenting something to them. And I remember being in the car, driving out of the parking lot, that beautiful sunshine, and hearing the radio, and just, I stopped, and it was overwhelming. I remember calling someone in the administration building and talking with them, and Christy Tudaldi had been over at Northeast. She was acting principal at that time because Ann Wyson had an accident and was hospitalized. And I remember going over to Christy saying, come on over, meeting with her, and there were a few of us, and we kind of spread out and had to notify the teachers to let them know what was going on without causing panic.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
What aren't you going to miss about either working in Brentwood or about your responsibilities that you have?
Okay, I am not, and I haven't missed all of those tests, counting the tests, bundling the tests, just counting and recounting and worrying about them. Are they being rained upon as the roof is leaking in the storage closet? I used to actually, I had terrible allergies from either the paper that the tests were printed on or the ink, and my hands would be just raw from handling all of those papers. So I didn't miss that at all.
And again, the flip side of that question is, what do you miss the most?
The people, constantly having the opportunity to learn something and share it with someone.
Kate, if you could wave a magic wand and make 3 things happen in this country for our educational system, and you have the ability, there's no limitation on your power to make it happen, you get 3 wishes. What would they be?
Equity in education. There's got to be a better way. That every child should have the same opportunities for education.
And I've heard it said that Nassau and Suffolk counties are the most racially segregated counties in the United States. And when you say equity, you're referring to the discriminatory practices in education?
No, more so the economic inequity.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
it's discriminatory by neighborhood,
absolutely. This is a ridiculous way we do it.
We have affluent school districts and we have poor districts.
Mm-hmm.
And Brentwood, let it be said, is not one of the more affluent school districts. Yeah.
No.
Okay. So equity would be one.
That would be one. Perhaps goes along with the equity, but having beautiful, comfortable schools, environments that nurture and feed the soul and the mind and the body, all of that.
And lastly,
those are 2 pretty big wishes.
Those are 2 biggies. They are.
I'm a little stuck on the 3rd one.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, we'll leave it at that. That would go a long way to making a better system. If you were to complete the phrase with an adjective, perhaps Brentwood teachers are.
A cut above the rest.
And looking at the students that have changed over the years but have remained pretty constant, Brentwood students are
the most deserving, the most talented, so many talents that other students in other places, I haven't encountered students who have the gifts that these children have.
And that we're losing unless there are teachers like you that can touch their lives and elicit what's there. Did you have a favorite year?
Oh my goodness. They were all wonderful. Perhaps the most different, and maybe it just stands out because it was so different. Once again, I was victim of accessing, waiting, for that moment to be placed someplace. And I'm not sure what year it was. It might have been it had to be the late 70s, maybe 77, 78. I was on special assignment. It was the first year of basic competency exams for high school graduation. And we had many students who could not pass those BCTs. So they found money someplace to create positions. There were 4 of us, 2 at R.O.B.S, 2 at Sonderling. Rhoda Oser and I were at Sonderling. And I was teaching math skills. She was teaching reading skills to 10th graders. We were on split session. And we would come in. We would pull the kids out of study hall and work with them on their math and reading skills. The teachers in the English and math classes got wind of this, like, who are these ladies taking these kids? Because we had a lot of ex-Grumman engineers who became teachers back then, and they were teaching basic math and a little frustrated because they couldn't get through to the kids. Their skill level was here, and we were talking about kids with a 5th grade math level. And so slowly, they'd be dropping by my room and saying, I know you're doing some kind of math skills here. Can I send 1 or 2 kids down and work with you? And I went from having 2 or 3 kids to almost a full class. I loved every minute of it. I did not have to do lesson plans because nobody came in to sub for me. Poor George Gates, who was the math chairman, I don't think he knew what to do with me. He said, I have to observe you, but I don't know what it I don't know what you do. I said, well, just come in. And he was wonderful. It was afternoon. I got everything done in the morning and could enjoy my morning. I went in at like 1 o'clock. It was done by 6 because there was no lunch. Although we were all starving by 6th period, when it would be 6 o'clock and the wind would shift from the west and we would smell the Entenmann's bakery, and we're all dying of hunger as we're waiting for dismissal. It was a great year. I really enjoyed it. The kids were wonderful. I got to know so many wonderful teachers at the high school, and ended up teaching English there. Because the next year, I had been accessed again, and Tom Campy from the English department chair hired me as an English teacher because he had gotten to know me, and and I loved it. Yeah.
What kind of advice, Kate, would you offer to someone who was thinking of following in your footsteps and not going through all the things that you had to go through in order to pay your dues to keep yourself in Brentwood? But I think the rewarding career that you had is something that is the envy of a lot of people. And if you could advise a young person going into the field, what would you think you might say to them?
Be patient, be flexible, keep an open mind, never doubt the impossible happening, and just embrace every moment of it.
Good advice. Good advice. Good advice for life.
I hope so, yeah.
Is there anything that we should have talked about that you wanted to make sure got into this conversation that we haven't mentioned?
I just wanted to let people know that I had the luxury of working with some outstanding educators and being in so many schools. I had the privilege of working with so many different principals in my life. Everyone was unique, had their own special gift that they imparted on to me. And so I would just like to say thank you to Lou Latito, Herb Fishman, Bill Cowan, Andy Levito, who else? Oh my goodness. Harvey Brickman, Carmine Pulio, Stan Yankowski, Christy Tadaldi. I know I'm forgetting people. Everyone was just gave me something that made me a better person and better teacher.
Thanks, Kate.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very, very much for being with us.